What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is Dr. Drphoenixsingh coming at you to be able to answer a valued viewer's question. You guys know I love you. Please do me a huge favor right now and just hit that like button. It's the big old thumbs up button. In fact, if you hate me, please do hit the down button, the dislike button. Still counts as engagement, so totally works for me. Now, there seems to be one person who watches this channel, and they're usually like the first person who does anything on the videos, and they give me a big thumbs down. And I love that person because they help to optimize the channel. So please do. Keep the hate coming. We'll make another video on how to be able to deal with haters and academic haters specifically, which is something that I'm really passionate about talking about because I used to be so terrified of the idea of anybody not liking me in academia, especially when I was in my early 20s. Versus now I just think it's really funny, but at the time, I mean, this was like a huge worry for me when I was first getting into the field. So if you want me to make that video sooner than later, make sure you let me know in the comments below and I'll make sure to make that later for you guys this week, okay? But today's question comes from Carolina. So Carolina, thank you so much for your question. Thank you so much for watching. Carolina's question actually comes from a video that I made a couple weeks ago, maybe even last week now. The weeks blend together. Welcome to 2020. And the name of the video is The Mindset to Dominate Academic Careers in Your 20s. Be sure to watch that one. That mindset to me is like incredibly important. I really do think that it is a key in your 20s to become very successful. So please do check that video out. Again, the name of it is The Mindset to Dominate Academic Careers in Your 20s. If you put that into your search bar, it should come right up. Especially if you're a subscriber to the channel. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. So here is Carolina's question for us today. Carolina asks, she says, I stumbled across your channel this week and this is so useful. I was wondering, could you make a video about how to start investing? Okay, this is a great question, Carolina, and I'm going to take this in the direction of financial investing. Obviously, there's different types of investing. You know, me personally, I believe in these 7 dimensions of optimization that I've come up with, that I talk about on this channel and my other channel here on YouTube that I have. If you want the details, ask me below. But the 7 are basically physical health, mental health, spiritual health, occupational, educational health, including finances. That's what we'll focus on. And then 3 types of social health. So social health with your romantic partner, social health with your platonic friends, and also social health with your family. And so for me, these are the 7 different areas of life that you kind of need to hit upon. They're like spinning plates. If you focus on one, the other ones are going to fall. So you got to keep running back and forth. And until you're dead, you're just going to have to keep spinning those plates. But it is that attempt to keep everything spinning as fast as possible and to essentially go out after the things that you want in life and what do you want to focus on at a given time. These are the things that end up making life ironically worth living, right? Taking on these responsibilities ironically makes life worth living, which, you know, it's weird. I think that if you ask a lot of people, Carolina, they'll say, you know, that their goal is to almost have no responsibilities, right? Like their goal is to be able to, you know, retire young. Like I retired when I was 30 because I didn't have to work anymore. And I honestly loved it. at first, and then as more time goes on, you want to know what the funny thing is, Carolina, that happens when you retire really young? The funny thing that happens is that like nobody contacts you anymore unless you reach out to them, right? All these people that you really were so useful to over the years, all of a sudden, like nobody's contacting you anymore. And you realize you're like, wow, you know, if you realize how expendable you are, just like in general, and the fact that, you know, when we pass away, the world's going to keep spinning, everything's going to keep moving. When we realize that we can simultaneously have a huge impact, but at the same time that in the larger scheme of things, we're really pretty meaningless. It doesn't matter how many doctorates you've got, how many publications you have, how good your letters of recommendation for jobs are. It is all relatively meaningless in the grand scheme of things, right? A lot of people think that that's nihilistic. It's a beautiful thing. It frees you so much. And it says to you basically, okay, if that's the case, and it's as meaningless for me as it is for everybody else, what do I want to do? What's the contribution that I want to make to this world, right? What obligations do I want to voluntarily take on? What load do I want to bear in this life? And then to be able to go after that, right? I think that's a really cool thing. So those are different types of investing you can do. You literally can invest in these different areas of your life. But I, Carolina, am going to take your question from the perspective of financial investment. Now, I do have a video on the channel that I recommend you look up, and it is all about retirement planning for academics. And that goes into all the different kinds of equities sorry, not equity, securities that I want you to know about. Exchange traded funds. I want you to know about mutual funds. I want you to know about bonds and bond trading. And I want you to know about, like single equities, like, Apple and Amazon, like single stocks. I don't know if I talk about option trading in there. I do a lot of call options, put options, like contracts trading, but that's more advanced stuff, right? The fact of the matter is, in terms of how you should start investing, Carolina, what my big recommendation is don't overcomplicate things, right? I'm a huge Warren Buffett fan. There was a news article about me, my father, and Warren Buffett because we went to see, him present in Nebraska, and we were in front of his home, and there was a reporter from Associated Press who came, and he interviewed my father and I, and they wrote this whole thing on it, which is kind of cool. It was a great souvenir for my dad and I because I love my father, and we're both big into investing in this kind of stuff. So my big recommendation is to be able to take into account, the greatest force in the universe, according to Albert Einstein, which is compound interest. The sooner that you start investing, and investing wisely, because there's a big difference between investing and gambling. And Carolina, most people, especially young people, they gamble with their money. And what I mean by that is that, they're putting all of their money into assets that are sexy, they're hot. I own a lot of Tesla. I own cryptocurrency. I do, right? I own, AMD and a variety. AMD is very good, and a variety of these different, chip developers, like semiconductor, like different. There's all these different, sectors in these things. We can talk about sometime if you want. You can also book a session with me. We can go really in depth and talk about you specifically. Keep in mind, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take like random financial advice from me. For me, it was something where I realized after I sold my last company that I was totally financially illiterate when it came to investing. Because I never had any money. Are you kidding me? I'm the guy, I literally, Carolina, look at this thing. Look, I use a corded mouse, Carolina, right? I don't have to, obviously, but I do, right? Because I'm a frugal cat. I just am. It's one of these things where, like, I was raised by a mom where we'd go and shop at thrift stores. And, I had my last car for like 16 years or something like that. Most of the accomplishments that I care about are about helping other people, or they're things that are kind of very intellectual pursuits. And so because of that, the idea of having like 16 Rolex watches and going and, vacationing in Bora Bora, not exactly a thrill for me, even though I respect people have different things that they want to accomplish in their life. And that's cool. My job is to judge other people and what they perceive to be important. My goal is to be able to get people the things that will provide them in the long run with sustainable joy, right? So when it comes to investing, I want you to stay away from anything that you perceive to be kind of short-term investing. I don't want you to be thinking about something like investing in Bitcoin and then waiting for it to, let's say, jack up 20%, or, God forbid, tank. Right now it's really high. It was an all-time high a couple weeks ago. And then a tank or whatever, and you just absolutely freak out. Warren Buffett's got a great quote about it. He basically says, if you're not okay losing 50% of your money overnight, right, then you have no business in investing. And I agree with that. This year, I lost an absurd amount of money when the stock market crashed, right? And then I made it all back. And then I made more, right? Because that's what ends up happening, right? Every year there's going to be an average of 2 corrections in U.S. stock market. 2 corrections meaning a drop of at least 10%. Right? And people freak out and they say, this is the big one. This is the big one. Why? Because every 7 to 10 years, we got this economic cycle. And usually what ends up happening is there's some huge event like we had now. Sometimes it's a black swan event that's totally something nobody could have predicted, or maybe there's a bubble and the bubble pops, or, we had the financial crisis, we had the dot-com bubble burst, all of these things over the last 20 years. So you just need to be prepared to see, yourself lose money in the short term. Why? Because like Warren Buffett says, if you believe in America, which I very much do, I love my country. Yeah, I love every country that I've lived in, but I really love the United States, right? I'm a U.S. American, first generation on my father's side American, and I love this country, right? And so essentially what happens is that if you believe in America, then what my recommendation is, and you believe in the future of America, which I genuinely believe you should, then don't try to be clever and then try to pick individual stocks, right? And I also don't even think you should be trying to pick individual sectors of the economy to invest in communications, retail, any finance. I don't think that you should be trying to pick these different sectors of the economy, especially if it's something where you're not able or not willing. I'm sure you would be willing. You're a smart person, right? But I don't know if you would be able, given how many things you have going on, to spend a ton of time, Carolina, looking at stocks every single day and looking at markets and reading the news and these things, and spending as much time as I do in terms of taking a look at your portfolio. And trying to rebalance everything on a quarterly basis and, optimize everything for taxes, make sure in terms of, capital gains, you're not, selling stuff too soon. There's so many considerations. Now, yeah, you can get a money, manager and these sorts of things, but usually they're going to end up taking, a percentage of, your portfolio on an annual basis for kind of watching everything for you. That's not a bad thing necessarily. Make sure they're a fiduciary, which means that they basically have an obligation to do what's in your best interest, because if they're not a fiduciary, they can do whatever they want with your money to be able to try to maximize the gains that they get, irregardless of what happens to your money. So obviously you want to go with somebody who's a money manager who's also a fiduciary, which honestly is harder to find than you might think. So my big recommendation, though, is to do what Warren Buffett is going to do for his wife when he passes away. Warren is very old now, and he's one of the most phenomenal Americans of all time, in my opinion, right? Which is totally subjective. But the basic idea for him is that he says he's just going to go to an ETF of something that is called the S&P 500, Standard & Poor 500, right? And these are what could be considered like the 500 quote-unquote best companies, not the biggest, right? So Dow Jones Industrial Average, right, is the 30 biggest companies, blue chip companies, right? Like the big ones, like Boeing, for example, right? Like the big companies, right? Versus S&P 500 is the 500 quote best companies, right? And best in a variety of different ways. Debt to equity ratio, what is their PDE trading? There's so many different ways to be able to classify companies, right? And the S&P 500 really represents a snapshot of the American economy. And so what my recommendation is to be able to pick something that tracks, an ETF, an exchange traded fund, that tracks the S&P 500. And what you see is that on an annualized basis over about 20 years, if you take your money and you put it into an ETF that tracks the S&P 500, you will make an average of approximately 8.333%, right? But only if you keep it for, like, again, that long and you don't touch it. It's almost like, I don't know, my mother bought an air fryer. There was an air fryer commercial on earlier today. I was thinking about her, and they're talking about, like, set it and forget it. It's like, put the chicken in, set it and forget it. And whenever you're ready, it'll be ready for you to eat. But that's the idea, right? Is that you want something, Carolina, where you can get on with your life, right? You can make money, you can do these things, you can invest automatically. And some of these stocks, they have these, what are they called, dividends. And you may want to enroll in something called a DRIP. DRIP is an acronym for Dividend Reinvestment. So yeah, Reinvestment Program or Protocol, I think it's program. So that this way, anytime that, money is getting generated by dividends, which means that the stock could go up or down, as a reward for investing in this case, the ETF, some single equities also provide this. Or if you're in like a REIT or something like this, in those, which is a real estate investment trust, then that's what it's all about. It's just, what money are you going to get back? What's that dividend? What's that yield, as they say? More of a yield than a dividend for REITs. So what happens is that, when this money, right, comes from these dividends and these things, it should be automatically reinvested. Just imagine you don't have it, right? After I sold my last company, I haven't spent a dime of that money, right? I literally I started a new company and I've been working my tail off. I did consultation work. I still, I do mentoring professionally. So anybody who contacts me, I always have, 10 or 15 mentees at a time on a weekly basis. It's one of the great joys of my life is working with you guys who watch this channel. So make sure you contact me at the website below. You can schedule an appointment with me, right? And we can get you very, very far in your career. Trust me. I had some help for sure in terms of my academic career. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I did everything solo, but there was, I made a lot of mistakes, I would say, that on my way to getting to where I am. And at the same time, I had some things that I had to figure out for myself that are pretty easy to teach that can make extraordinarily huge differences in the magnitude of your success in academia, regardless of what your goal is. I want you to have those successes, and I want to teach you how to do it. I try to do it on this channel, but to tailor it to you as an individual, you have to have a session with me because I can't do everything specifically to a specific individual on the channel, right? So it is what it is. But anybody who's listening to this, I would love to talk to you. I'd love to book a session with you so I can really get to know you and I can help you as much as I can. Again, I have very little to gain from, I mean, let alone this channel, but also just like, you know, helping and these sorts of things. But this is what I'm very passionate about and I'm very good at it. Right, and it's one of these things where this is how I choose to spend my time now because I don't have to spend my time doing anything. So you know that I'm doing it because I care a lot about you specifically, okay, and being there for you. So just know that because I really do mean it. Okay, so take your money, put it into something that tracks S&P 500. The easiest one is just SPY. Right? SPY is the ticker, right, for the largest ETF, right, that tracks the S&P 500. There's other ones. Vanguard's got one. Schwab's got one. Anytime that you have any of these, take a look at the yield, which is like the dividend, right? And then also take a look at something called the NER, which is the net expense ratio. Usually, I mean, almost always, especially for these, the net expense ratio will be less than the dividend, so then you'll be fine. Essentially, what the net expense ratio is that let's say that the dividend is 2% and the net expense ratio is 1%, right? Basically, they kind of offset each other, and the effective dividend, at the end of the day, the net dividend ends up being about 1%. Right, so the net expense ratio is kind of like the cost to play. Think about it like that, right? The buy-in, as it were, on an annualized basis. So that's the net expense ratio. So, and usually these ETFs end up getting, you know, they get shifted around at least once a year, you know, minimum. But you don't have to pay any money for them to get shifted around, right, on an annualized basis. They're very stable, unlike mutual funds, where there's a lot more active trading that goes on. And the pros and cons of mutual funds relative to exchange-traded funds I talk about in another video. So, anyway, Carolina, I hope that was helpful, but that's really what I recommend. Don't try to be clever. You're incredibly smart, I'm sure. Don't try to be clever when it comes to money, right? Take the money, put it into something stable that is going to grow and compound over time, set it and forget it, then don't think about it. Just don't think about it, right? Some people love real estate and these things. God bless them, it's great. I have a lot of money in real estate myself. Took me, you know, quite some time and a huge amount of reading to be able to understand kind of what I'm doing with that, right? If you don't have the time, that's okay, right? There are a lot of different kinds of income that are out there to be able to generate. And there's always a lot of ways to make money. Never forget that. There's always ways to make money, but you have to hustle. You got to get on your grind and really crush it, Carolee. I mean, that's the thing, right? Question is, what are you doing with your time? You have the same 24 hours in the day as I do and as everybody else does, right? The most successful person, the least successful person. We all have 24 hours in the day. What are you spending it doing? That is the question. And are you willing to give up potentially several years or even more, but at least several years of your life to be able to get that financial stability for the remainder of your life, to cut back on all unnecessary expenses, to put yourself on a strong financial budget, like a budget, and then stick to it. Not you make the budget and then you're like, I don't know where the money's going. No. Track it using something like, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, even though I've been very lucky to stay out of debt, right? But if you are in debt, take a look at Dave Ramsey's program because I'm a really big fan of it. I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of his program. He's a straight shooter like I try to be, so respect to Dave Ramsey. Okay, Carolina, that's my answer. Long-winded as though it may be. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching again. Share this video and any of the other ones with your friends, colleagues, and students on social media. Help me grow this, guys. Help me grow this channel. Just let's do it together. We've already had a freaking ridiculous year. The size of the channel grew from like 400 people to almost 5,000 people in a year. That's amazing. And that's a testament to you and how passionate you are about learning more about this stuff. So thank you for watching, because you're the reason I do it. All right, guys, have a great day. Peace.